Okay, so topic that we are going to cover right now is the domain class and GORM part 2. So we're going to learn various querying schemes. In the first domain class and GORM part 1, we learn how to use dynamic finders. There are other types of querying schemes that you can use, such as where queries and criteria queries, detached criteria, named queries, and HQL queries. So we're going to actually try them all in this presentation and hands-on lab. And we're going to actually learn the locking, especially we are going to experiment with optimistic locking. And we are going to take a look at table generation strategy and database support. Yeah, here we're going to actually use MySQL instead of internal H2 database. Okay. All right, so let's move on. So let's try querying. So dynamic scheme, querying schemes in GORM, as I said before, dynamic finders, where criteria, named queries, and HQL queries, and also detached queries. All right, so let's move on with first where queries. Where queries provides powerful mechanism to compose queries. So it provides a compile time checking compared to dynamic finders. Dynamic finders, because things are that the finder methods are constructed during runtime, there is no compile time checking. Here, there could be some compile time checking. For example, if you're using wrong name here, then that might actually give you a compile time error. And more flexible than dynamic queries. You can certainly construct more flexibly the criteria. Okay, so it's more flexible than dynamic queries and less verbose than criteria. So the where clause, the way that you're going to use where clause is where method is to accept the closure, which defines the query conditions. In this case, I'm defining query condition. The first name has to be Sang. So I'm looking for all people whose first name is Sang. Okay, and once you got the query object, then you can perform find operation or find all operation. The where method returns detached criteria object. We're going to learn the detached criteria object later on again, which means it's not associated with any particular database connection or session, meaning you can actually construct it first and then you can use it later. For example, inside your domain class, you can actually construct where clause like this, where query like this, where last name Simpson. And this is the static static property here, and then we can actually use it later on. Okay, so we can call this static method Simpsons, and it will return collection object, and then we can perform each method, and then we can actually add closure for performing the things for each of those items. The where query execution is lazy by default. What that means is that actual query happens when it is being used, when the usage of detached criteria instance. Okay, so when you call the where method, it returns detached criteria object. It does not actually perform anything at that point. It is actually performing query operation when that detached criteria object is used to perform query operation. All right, so if you want to perform the query operation immediately, instead of using where, you can use the find all right away from your domain class. So we have seen this one before. Yeah, person find all, and sort based on first name, and you can use find, and this is all performing the query operation immediately. Okay, so you don't see any where the method here. These, if you want to actually perform query right away, then this is the methods you can use for that domain class. Okay, so where query composition, since where method returns a detached criteria instance, you can actually compose new queries from the original query. Okay, so here we we get the query one object, which is a type of detached criteria, and then you can actually add another one. So from the query one, I am going to have another where the method, and then query two is another detached criteria object, and you can keep continuing. Okay, and once you got the last query object, then you can perform find or find all operation. You can also do batch updates and delete. So here I created the where query here. Last name is Simpson, and then I can actually perform update all. So you can do find all, and update all. So in this case, for all the people whose last name happen to be Simpson, I want to change that last name to blocks. Right. So let's do our first hands-on lab. So where clause. So yeah, we're going to actually use pet clinic sample application. That sample application is available as part of the hands-on lab. On the samples directory of this particular hands-on lab, you should be able to find pet clinic sample application. So we are going to run this application. So let me see. Okay, I'm already running. So I'm going to go to home. When you run the application, this is what we are going to see. And so, this is actually a sample application written by Grails community member. So you can actually see the tutorial if you want to. Okay, so I kind of explain, what things make up this application. Okay. Anyway, so what we want to do is we want to display all veterinarians. Okay, so these are the database that we are going to use. This is the table that we are going to use to perform where-based query. Okay. Okay, so what we want to do is we run the application, and this is the table and data we are going to use. Now, first we are going to add a new action to clinic controller, and here we are using where clause, and we want to find all people whose name happen to be Helen, and then we are going to use the vets GSP file, which is already there to display the result. Okay, so here you can see we have first name Helen. We have two people, Helen and oh, just one, I guess. Okay, so let's change the code. So clinic controller, and we are going to add this code. And save the change. And yeah, by the way, if you are, using Eclipse or STS, you can do code completion. So you can, type FIN here. So let's actually try that. So FIN and control space, then you should be, why it doesn't show? Oh, here we go. Okay. So it should give you all the options that start with kind of light, huh? Control space, yes, it should actually work. Oh, here we go. Okay. So I can choose find all collection here. Okay. And again, save the change. And then we can go to that action. So if I click this one, and I should see one person whose first name happened to be Helen. Okay. And then we are going to try where query composition. So here we are going to compose two one query object based on the other one. So I'm going to again copy this code. Again, this is the same code that you have seen. Okay, save the change. And we are going to go. So here we are going to find a person whose first name is Helen and the last name is Leary. So we should actually see just one person, I guess. Okay, it's just one person, yes. Okay, the next one is batch update. So again, this is the same code that we have seen here. So we want to find every veterinarian whose first name happened to be Helen. Then we want to change that person's the first name to Sang. Okay, so let's try this. Save the change. And we can again go to here. And we can see the Helen Leary's first name is changed to Sang. Okay. Yeah, looks like I have changed this one to Helen before, so that's why. Okay, so that is exercise 1. So let's move on to the next topic. Next topic is criteria queries. Okay. So what is criteria? So criteria is something that you see in Hibernate as well as in JPA. So criteria is an advanced way to query that uses Groovy Builder to construct potentially complex queries. Okay, so you can do pretty complex queries. And in Grails, it's using what is called the Groovy Builder. So we're going to actually cover Groovy Builder later on as topic number 18. You can actually build hierarchical tree structure using Groovy Builder pattern. Okay, so it's a hierarchy of method calls and closures, and basically you can create tree-like structure like XML or GUI, and even construct it in a tree-like queries. Okay, so criteria can be used either with criteria or create criteria. So this is a bit simpler syntax, okay, than create criteria, and we'll see examples of both. Underneath is using Hibernate criteria API, and also it's using restriction class of Hibernate criteria API. Okay. All right, so create criteria method. Basically, once you create a criteria method from your domain class, you can call create criteria. So every domain class should have create criteria method, and it will return criteria object. And then you can construct your criteria in a form of closure. So this is like a tree-like structure. Okay, so this red colored is a criteria. Okay, so you create criteria in the form of closure, and then you can actually call get, list, scroll, and count method on the criteria object. Okay, so this is once you get the criteria object, you call a method like a list, and then you also provide a closure that represents criteria condition. Okay, so with criteria, so this code is simplified as this with using with criteria. Here, you create criteria object first, and then you call a method of list passing closure that specifies query condition. Here, you can just use domain class and then with criteria. So this is a bit simpler syntax than using create criteria. Okay, so you probably see this syntax most of the time. Conjunctions and disjunctions. So you can group criteria using logical OR, the and or and this this block. So here I'm OR between this and this, and between this and this, and not. Okay, and this is actually inside that closure. You can do also associations. So suppose you have two domain classes. One is, in this case, customer, and the other one is order. So customer has one-to-many relationship with order class. So you see customer has many static the property here. Now you can construct the query conditions using that association. So here, basically what I'm saying is that I'd like to get all the customers whose orders between now and 10, and a date is between this and this. So, basically I'd like to find all the customers who have orders whose order date is 10 hours before and until now. Okay, so that's basically what I'm trying to query with this. Okay, so pretty simple syntax, but pretty powerful. You can also do querying with projections. So here I like to count all the branch. Okay, yeah, and count distinct means all the distinct branches. You can also have a named queries. So once you created named queries, in this case, in your domain class, you can create multiple named queries using named queries property here. And I have defined two named query. One is adult, the other one is children starting with F. Okay, and then this is your the query condition. Okay, so once you created named queries, you can use it in many places. So it provides reusability and also encapsulation. So later on, you can call this named query from your domain class, person.adults, and you can also add another finder method here. And you can also, so here, children starting with F and count. Okay, so again, pretty powerful. Okay, so lab exercise 2. So we're going to just exercise the things that we learned during the presentation. So here we're going to do simple create criteria query. So here we like to find all the veterinarians whose first name is either starting with H or L, and the max result I like to have is 3, and order I like to have it to be displayed based on last name, ascending order. Okay, so let's add this. I'm gonna just remove this guy. Okay, and let's go to this URL, and you can see there are two people. Okay, who start with the first name H, that's Henry, and last name L, so that is Sang. Okay. Okay, so criteria query with association. So here we are going to add specialties. So the vets has specialties. So if you take a look at the vet domain class, the vet and specialty has one-to-many relationship, specialties. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we want to find all the veterinarians with the same condition as above, but whose specialty is radiology. Okay, so let's just add this. I'm gonna just copy the whole thing. Okay, save the change. And let's go to this query action, and we see two people. Okay, so you can see both of them are radiology. Okay. Okay, so moving forward, criteria query with projection. Okay, so here we like to find distinct first names. Okay, and then we like to find out the number of that distinct first names. Okay. And we are going to go to that action. So in this case, number of first name is 6. Okay. Yeah, so the result might be a little different because I was actually capturing the screenshot using a bit different data. Okay. All right, named query. So let's add two named query here to the vet, the domain class. So vet. Okay. So we basically added the first named query is called name query one. It's basically, the anybody whose first name is starting with H and last name, or the last name start with L. And this is something that we have seen before. And yeah, so these are the two queries we've done above. Okay, we just happen to have made it. Made it as a named query. And then we are going to change we're going to add two more actions here, which now we are using named query. Okay, named query one and named query two. So let's add these two to the controller here. Save. And since we have modified the domain class, we might have to restart the application. So let me restart the application and let's rerun the application. And if I click this one, it should actually work the same result as we have seen before. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna just move ahead. Detached criteria. So the remember that the where clause actually returns the detached criteria, right? So you can actually use the detached criteria directly if you want to, but that's pretty rare and not recommended. Okay. So detached criteria is a criteria query that is not associated with any given database session or connection. Okay. So it's supported from Grails 2.0. Again, you can actually use it for as a reusable criteria object, basically. So that's basically what he's saying. So once you created a detached criteria object passing your domain class, and then you can actually build, then you can actually provide, you can actually call the build method, and then you can actually provide the query condition. Okay, so this is also allowed. And you can actually call these methods once you got the criteria, detached criteria object. Okay, so list, get, count, exist, delete all, and update all. You can also do batch operations with the detached criteria, as we have seen before. Okay. All right, so let's do exercise 3. So I'm going to change I'm going to actually add another method. So this is the detached criteria. Yeah, so this is kind of rarely used, so it's not probably that much important. And I probably have to import the class. So that's the reason detached area is not type is missing. That's why. Okay, and save the change. And I can go to detached criteria. Okay, so find the result. And this is the detached criteria example 2. Okay, so here so this is again pretty much the same thing that we have seen before. So let me just add these things. Okay, so all right, so let's move on to the next HQL. if where method, where query, or the criteria query, or even detached criteria, do not actually provide the query schemes that you need, you can actually go to Hibernate query language. So this is a little bit lower level. It's not as low as SQL, but it's just above. Okay. So it might actually give you a bit more control in case you find other query schemes do not meet your need. So GORM classes also support HQL. So GORM provides a number of methods that work with HQL, including find all, and execute queries. So here, this is your HQL, the query, the statement. Okay, so from book as B, where B dot title like is this. Okay, so I like to find all the books whose title start with load of the. Okay. So you can see it's like SQL, but these are the domain classes, not actually tables. Okay. Here I like to find the author whose first name is, so here we find, this is not really HQL. So we find the author first, and then we are going to find all the books written by that author. So this is actually the HQL. Here, this is the positional parameter. Okay, so HQL provides the positional parameter as well as name parameter. So this is an example of positional parameter where you're actually providing the value, in this case, author. So if you have a multiple positional parameters, and you'll probably have a multiple in this array. Okay, so this is actually positional parameter and name parameter example. So here, here this is actually something that that will be replaced by this. Okay, and here, this is the same example we have seen in the previous slide. So this is a positional parameter that is being replaced by author here. Okay. This is the name parameter. So usually named parameter scheme is actually preferred because it doesn't actually have less dependency. You actually making sure that what you provide in this array is in the order. So name parameter is like you specify the name of the parameter that needs to be replaced with the values. In this case, we have search dot search, and that will be replaced with this value. Okay, so again, we have only one, so it might not be a big deal. But if you have a multiple name parameters, then it doesn't matter, how these things are in fact ordered in this array, because it will find out which one matches which, because it has a name. Okay, so in the hands-on lab, we'll have an exercise where we have a multiple positional parameters and multiple named parameters. Okay, so exercise 4, so that's HQL query. Okay. All right, so this is a very simple HQL query. We like to find all the vets whose first name is starting with, it's like HE. Okay, so let's try this. And we are going to go here and, oops, vets HQL query. At HQL query. Okay, nothing wrong. So clinic vets HQL query. Oh, here you go. Okay, so I don't know why it didn't work the first time. Maybe I'd save it. Okay. All right, so that is an example of HQL query, and this is a positional parameter. So in this case, we have two positional parameters. We'd like to change all the vets whose first name so we'd like to actually find all the vets whose first name is like with the H, and the last name like with L. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, save the change and see it, check it. Okay, so it worked. Named queries, HL query with a named parameters. So here we have first name and last name, and first name and last name. So here you can actually exchange these two, and that still should work because it is using named parameter, so it knows which parameter is supposed to replace. Okay, so let's try this. It should actually result the same. Okay, all right. Okay, so that is queries. Let's move on to locking. Okay, so optimistic locking is the default locking scheme for most of the persistence operation. Okay, so GORM configured to use optimistic locking as a default. Okay, so this is not a, Grails is not an exception to this. So optimistic locking is a feature that Hibernate provides, and basically whenever something is being updated, the version column of the table will be updated as well. So, the version column gets created every time you create a table, right? So that is actually automatically done. That is in fact for providing optimistic locking. So two fields that get automatically created for every table is ID field as well as the version column. Okay, ID column and version column. So the version column gets read into the version property that contains the current version state of the persistent instance, which you can access. So, domain class that you create, in fact, have a version, property automatically added as well. Okay, and that gets reflected in the version column of the table. Okay. All right, so you can in fact actually, get your the domain object from the table, and then you can actually read the version, which we are going to do in a few minutes in the hands-on lab exercise. Okay, sorry. So when you perform update operation, that version of the table will be updated. It will be incremented by 1. So optimistic locking is, so let's actually talking about the optimistic locking exception. So when multiple people are trying to update the same record, okay, and that's the time the optimistic locking will be, optimistic locking exception could happen. So suppose you are actually updating the process of, you read the record. So at that point, record version number is 2. So when then you're about to update the record, and later while you're actually in the process of updating it, somebody actually updated that record. That means the version number incremented to 3. So now when you try to change the value, actually save the change, it will find the version number is not the 2 that I thought. So it will actually cause the optimistic lock-in exception. Okay. So when you actually try to save, okay, so once you read it, and then if somebody else changed their record, and then when you try to save it, then you will experience optimistic locking failure exception. Okay. All right. So, there are two schemes, optimistic locking and pessimistic locking. Grails support both. And again, as I said, Grails and pretty much all the other persistency schemes use the optimistic locking as a default. The reason is because optimistic locking is providing better performance. And optimistic locking is actually useful for because most of the database operations are in fact read and with occasional write. Okay, so so downside optimistic locking is you have to deal with the exception if that the race condition happens. Okay, all right. So pessimistic locking is basically when you are reading a record, you lock the whole thing. You lock the whole record actually, and until you save it. So obviously this is going to provide complete isolation, but it will actually have pretty bad performance. Okay, so in order to use pessimistic locking, you are going to use a lock record like this. Okay. Modification checking. Yeah, so in Hibernate has a dirty checking, and sorry about that. once you have loaded and possibly modified the persistence domain instance, it's not straightforward to retrieve the original value, okay? Because if you try to reload the instance using get, Hibernate at that point will actually return the modified instance from the session cache. And if you try to reload using another query, it will actually cause the save automatically, okay? Because Hibernate does the 30-bit dirty checking, and it will save it first, okay? So in case you want to actually see the original value before you make a change in your domain instance, the GORM provides multiple methods that you can actually use. First of all, you can check whether a particular field has been modified by using isDirty method. And you can also actually call get dirty property names to find all the properties that have been changed. And lastly, you can call get persistent value. It will actually give you the original value before the change. Okay, so this is just to bypass the dirty checking of Hibernate. Okay. All right, so let's do exercise 5. So we are going to add, so here we are going to actually try we are going to actually try two things: optimistic locking versioning. So every time you are updating a record, you are going to see the version number gets updated as well. And then we are going to actually simulate the optimistic locking exception, okay? So what we're going to do is we are going to try to update a particular record after we read it, and then we are going to simulate another user by using actually DB console and update the version number manually, okay? Or you could actually run another browser type, like if I'm using Firefox, I can use, for example, Internet Explorer or Chrome, simulating another user, and I can actually change that value. That actually is actually simulating another user actually changed the value. And then when you try to actually save it, you're going to experience optimistic locking exception. So that's what you're going to do some experimentation. So let's create the controller. So we are going to create the create controller org Grails samples specialty. So create controller org Grails samples specialty. I hope I typed correctly. Create controller org.grails.samples and specialty. Yes. Okay, so I created a specialty controller, and we are going to do dynamic scaffolding. Okay. All right, here we go. So we are going to do dynamic scaffolding. Okay, and save them all. Okay, we did that. And then we are going to see specialty. So for now, oops. Specialty. Maybe I didn't create the index.html file. Oh, wait a minute. This is dynamic scaffolding, so we should actually. Did I change any domain class? No, I didn't change any domain class. So this one should work. Maybe it's actually lagging. Index views specialty. Let's see whether. Views specialty index.jsp page. It's a dynamic scaffolding, so that should work fine. Specialty controller with the dynamic scaffolding. This one, specialty name. Okay, so we're going to actually go to the top level and see what the deal is. Okay. Okay. And the clinic. Specialty. I'm kind of puzzled why it's not working. Specialty, yeah. So I was bitten by the I before, so I think I did it correctly. Specialty. Next HTML. All right, so I am going to actually do generation all. So I'm going to just remove yeah, so I can actually do OLG Grails. Yeah, so I'm going to actually to generate all. Okay, so I'm going to actually generate the code. Okay, to make sure. Okay, specialty. Okay. This one at least we can see if there is index.jsp file. So the things I'm actually trying to do is this. Let me explain the logic here. So what we're going to do is we're going to, yeah, so the first we're going to actually see the versioning. So every time I change, we're going to actually take a look at the version field first of all. So when you go to the specialty table, you can see, all the columns, all the records has a version the number. So because nothing has been changed, the version number is 1. So now if I actually change this version, so for example, if I change this radiology to something else, I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to change it to pet radiology, and then update it. And then if I actually take a look at the value, you can see the version number is changed to 1. So every time somebody change the value, it will change the value, it will increment it by 1, okay? So let's actually see whether we have a better luck. Okay, I'm going to actually restart the application. Okay, so I have a problem. I actually have to say, yeah, why? Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna say all. Okay, all right, so everything is generated. And I'm going to, yeah, so I'm gonna just restart it again and run the application. So while it's doing it, let me actually continue the optimistic locking scenario. So optimistic locking scenario is, so when you're about to change, okay, so this is a case that you're about to change it again, okay. Now you're going to actually go to the DB console, And yeah, so this is actually the case. Oh, so this is optimistic locking case. So now you can see the the version number gets changed every time somebody actually updated it. In the optimistic locking exception scenario case, okay, what we want to do is you want to change it again. Okay, so but you do not want to change now. Okay, you just want to actually about to update. You read it and you're about to update it. And now you're going to actually go to DB console and you are going to actually update this value manually. So this is just kind of simulating somebody else's actually change the value. Okay, so we're going to actually edit the value to here to 2. Okay, so we save the change. So that simulates somebody changed the value while you actually are about to change. Now when you try to update it, okay, you're going to see another user has updated this specialty while you are editing exception. This is actually a message because the optimistic locking exception happened. Okay, so let me see whether I have a better lock this time. So let me try to so I'm gonna actually see specialty. Okay, so this don't work time. Okay, so I'm gonna change this up radiology to I'm gonna add it. So I'm just this is we're doing 5.1. We're gonna actually see radiology number 1 update, and then we're gonna actually take a look at the DB console, and you will see DB console, and you will see the specialty value has been changed to 1. Okay, if I update it again, then it will be updated too. Okay, all right, so what we are going to do now is actually simulating optimistic locking. Okay, so now we are about to let's actually go back to specialty again here. Okay, now we're going to actually change this guy to we are about to edit. So we actually read this one. Now we are trying to edit. Before we edit, now we are actually going to the DB console. So I'm going to actually copy this one here. I'm going to actually go to DB console, okay, clinic, DB console. And we are going to manually change it. Actually, you could actually use another browser, like I could use Internet Explorer, Chrome, to actually change it. That simulates another user as well. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to just go to here and run it here. I'm going to actually manually change this value. So I click Edit, and I'm going to change this value to 2. Okay, and save it. Okay, so it's saved. Now I go back to here. If I try to update this guy to something else, okay, and update, now I got the optimistic locking. Another user has updated this specialty while you are editing. So in this case, if you take a look at the specialty controller case, okay, you will actually see that error message. So this is something that I said, the optimistic locking exception is something that you have to handle yourself. So this is the update case. You can see another user has updated this specialty while you are editing. Okay, and this is because of the version number is not, this is basically optimistic locking exception problem that you get. Okay. Okay, so that is optimistic locking that we have seen. Let's see. Okay, so the next topic is table generation strategy. So, you have seen Grails support 3 different environments: development, testing, production. And, each requirements for each environment are different. For example, they might use a different database server, different credentials, and different table generation strategy. Okay. So, mostly we are working with a development environment, which actually is using internal H2 memory database server, but obviously testing and production environment could be different. So, if you want to run production, you're going to say Grails production run app like this. Okay. Now, in terms of table generation strategy, you could use create drop. That has been the case that we've been using. So what it does is that every time Grails application gets restarted, it will recreate the tables. Okay, so it's actually useful for development environment. Every time Grails start, tables are created. Every time it's shut down, tables are dropped. Okay. However, the other environments is using something different. Update is test and production environments use this as default, and it leaves the tables and data intact. Okay. Create is leaves the tables but deletes the data on Grails shutdown. Okay. All right. So that is table generation strategy. Database support. If you want to use a different database, you can actually you can change that. You can specify that in data source.groovy file. So in the default development environment, you can see it's using H2 memory database. Okay, and the name of the database is devdb. Okay, and it's using create drop as the table generation strategy. If you want to use MySQL, and then the data source information has to be specified accordingly, and then you are going to specify different the information. Okay, so that's what we are going to do in exercise 6. Okay, so yeah, we take a look at the table generation strategy. Okay, so what we're going to do is this one I'm going to skip it. Okay. Is basically this exercise is that once you change the update strategy, even if you restart your Grails application, you're going to still see the database table. That's basically the exercise. Let's actually do MySQL. So here that is 6.2. So we are going to change build config.groovy file. Here we have to add MySQL connector plugin. Okay, so this is the driver that you have to have. So we will change config build config.groovy file, and we are going to add this dependency. Yeah, it's basically adding a job file, driver job file into the system. Yeah, actually this is the same thing here. Yeah, I can just uncomment. Okay, and then I'm going to modify data source to use the MySQL. So I'm going to change data source. And basically, I'm going to just copy the whole thing. So you can see it's using MySQL driver, and I'm using the this is a URL. Okay, right. So I'm going to just copy these things and replace the existing data source. Okay, and save them all. And then I'm going to, of course, I'm going to stop this application. I'm going to start MySQL. Start MySQL. Okay, so I'm starting MySQL that I have on my system. Okay, so and then I'm going to actually, yeah, we have to create a database. Okay, so we are going to go to MySQL admin command shell, MySQL. I'm using root with no password. Okay, and password is null. Okay, so now let's see. Let me see whether I have already created these databases. Show databases. Okay, so I have created these databases before because I tested this exercise. Okay, so that's good. And then we're going to actually restart the application to see whether this application is up and running fine. So we are going to run this application. So it's supposed to use MySQL now. And we're going to see whether things are working as expected. And then we are going to actually verify whether tables in fact create it. So we're going to actually use Grails MySQL div database as a default. So I might as well do that right now here. Use Grails MySQL dev semicolon. Okay, and let me see, show tables. Okay, it's now empty because tables are not created yet. Okay, so let's see whether it's up and running now. Okay, it's not started yet. Okay, so let's see whether things worked. Okay, so we can see veterinarian. Okay, yeah, things are good. So now we are going to see whether tables are created. So we'll say show tables. Okay, so you can see person, pet type specialty, and vet specialty, and visit. Things are all created. Okay, so now we can tell. Yeah, so we can also do select star from specialty, and whether those things are all created correctly. Okay, and you can certainly verify the database from a DB console. So here, let's try the DB console. Pet clinic DB console, and we have to choose generic MySQL here, and we have to provide the correct URL. So it's localhost, and yeah, so we have the correct Grails MySQL dev. That's the right database. That's cool. Yeah, I think because I have used it before, it is actually remember that as root and connect. Okay, so I can connect, and I can see vet. Person. Yeah, vet is a person, so I should see all the vets. Okay. All right, so that's that. Okay, so let me make sure the recording is done.